Thanks everyone for joining us today. I saw a couple more people come in, so we'll do it just 1 second as people are joining and getting audio connected and things like that. I'm going to apologize first because I'm getting over a cold. I do not have COVID. I did get tested. I was talking to our panelist as we were preparing to come in that it is really stressful to get any sort of cold because you're like, do I just have the sniffles or do I have a life-threatening illness? I have the former, not the latter. It turns out I've been tested. So we'll get started in just a moment. We're going to be talking about a little bit about through the context of some of the projects that are happening in the lead up to World Stage Design. That will lead us to the EcoScenography program. I'll give a little bit of context about what we're talking about in the first place, which I think that people might be interested in. There are multiple opportunities. Oh, there's Marie Renee. Hello. Um, we'll have you'll have multiple opportunities throughout the Congress actually to engage with the topic of ecoscenography and sustainability as they relate to what we're talking about, both specifically with world stage design and otherwise with other activities through various partners at WISET. And we're going to talk about the larger program that's happening as well. So thanks for joining us today. I hope that this on your second day of the World Congress has been going well. I appreciate the number of familiar faces who have been involved with World Stage Design who are in the on the registration page for World Congress. As the number of people who I can see are deep in thought of thinking about how to plan for world stage design in our last conversations. And I'm sure we'll have another few productive days. There's some great content coming up with a number of the commissions as well. So I'm Ian Garrett, and I'm one of the co-chairs of World Stage Design, working with April Visco, where it will be at University of Calgary. I, however, am in Toronto or Takaranto, which has traditionally been the caretakers of this land have traditionally been the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis, and is now home to many Indigenous peoples. And I want to acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. And I also want to acknowledge, because we're going to be moving around a little bit in Canada, and as you hear about World Stage Design programming, you'll hear about things where there are vast distances between us. So I also want to acknowledge relations across Turtle Island, across what is now known more commonly in circles as North America, to join us, and you'll be hearing from people throughout World Stage Design programming. When we were looking at the primary thoughts, what has come to be contained within this metaphor of the three sisters, a mountain that has three peaks but shares a base in Alberta, adjacent to where a number of world stage design activities will be happening. One of the areas of priority that we wanted to make sure that we focused on was ecoscenography. And I'm going to be borrowing from there is a group of people working on the ecoscenography sister in the programming for World Stage Design, some of whom we're going to hear from today. One person that many of you might actually know that you will be like, where is she? Is Tanya Beer. It's midnight where she is. So we said, don't worry about it. She's been very game at various times, as we're all familiar with in doing these types of OISTAT events. She's been very game to wake up very early and stay up very late, and schedules just didn't allow it this time. We gave her permission to do this because we're going to be talking particularly about some programming that is happening here in Canada to focus on. But I'm going to borrow just directly as the coiner, as the one who came up with the term ecoscenography, as we typically use it with Tanya's definition. Like ecology, scenography is concerned with interrelationships, the interactivity between architecture, light, sound, bodies, and the senses, a metaphor for the ecosystem of total theater experience. And she proposes that combining the two terms ecology and scenography suggests something more comprehensive and far-reaching than the purely metaphorical. To be ecological means being concerned with the wider effects of scenographic production, to consider how it affects and relates to the broader ecosystem beyond the theater. It entails incorporating principles of ecology, pardon me, to create recyclable, biodegradable, restorative, and or generative performance spaces. And this is what is intrinsic to the EcoScenographic practice. So there are a number of people on this call who have been connected to that. There's a number of people who are joining outside of perhaps the usual suspects of an OISTAT gathering, or being introduced to it for the first time, or overlap with a project connected to the climate change theater action. And an eco-design charrette that's happening with that. We're going to hear about that from Triga Creative in a moment, and I'll introduce that in a bit. And we're also looking at, so there's one aspect of how do we approach it scenographically from a design and production perspective. And to overlap into that, we'll be also hearing from Anne-Catherine Lebon from EcoSceno, which is a program that has launched in Montreal, but looking at, well, it goes much deeper than just material reuse. And that's what your presentation will be at. I'll let you give the presentation about it. And then also, we'll hear from someone who has been involved both in EcoSceno, but also has a history of working in this way, regardless of whether or not she has taken on the title of EcoScenography or not, but whose work definitely fits within this. Quebecois designer Marie-Renée Bouget-Harvey, who will also present, and will be presenting in French as well. So also a taste of coming to Canada for the events that we'll have. So we'll be hearing from people in. Yes.
Ian, I'm sorry. On behalf of some colleagues, would you mind talking a little bit more slowly and as clearly as you can, because not everybody is native. I'm saying this on behalf of some colleagues. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you for saying something. I do tend to talk fast. I will slow it down. I do want to transfer it over to our panelists today so that they have an opportunity to present. Let's attribute my speed to my excitement for our panelists and their presentations today. First, we'll hear from Triga Creative, from which Alexandra Lord and Michelle Tracy are present. They'll be talking about the design charrette, which I mentioned before. It's related to the Climate Change Theater Action, which is a biannual distributed festival of climate change plays. It commissions 50 playwrights from around the world, pardon me, to write new short plays that become freely available, and they're working with designers on it. I might turn it over to you because I'm going to start coughing in a second.
Thank you for the introduction, Ian. Hi, everybody. So I'll just introduce myself. I'm Michelle Tracy. I'm 1/3 of Triga Creative. I'm a scenographer based in Toronto, and this is Alexandra.
And I'm one of the 2 other designers of Triga Creative, and Shannon Lee Doyle is our 3rd partner. She can't join us today, but she sends her hellos. And we'll share our screen and start telling you more about our global eco design charrette.
All right. So just once again, want to welcome everyone to our presentation, which is an extension of a presentation we gave for the World Stage Design Launch event. So we're so excited to tell you more about our global eco design charrette, and which is an event that is produced by the Center for Sustainable Practices in the Arts, i.e. Ian Garrett, in partnership with Triga Creative. And the event is taking place over September to December, which is the same timeframe as the Climate Change Theater Action Festival. So Triga Creative, who are we? We are 3 freelance designers who work in the realm of space, bodies, and light. We are all based in Toronto, and we formed as a collective in 2017 to sort of as a response to some gaps that we found working as freelance designers in the industry. We were hoping to sort of come together and create a more supportive infrastructure to be freelancers and collaborate on projects that were greater scale than any of us could take on as individuals. So just a short description of who we are. Triga is Alexandra Lord, Michelle Tracy, and Shannon Lee Doyle, 3 next generation designers of space, bodies, and light for events and performance. Through harmony and disruption, Triga creates extraordinary live experiences, applying an autonomous, collaborative model that values the sustainability of people, planet, and profit. Triga is able to design for any scope, always at the human scale.
And as Ian mentioned, our charrette is centered around the Climate Change Theater Action Festival, which is a US-Canadian collaboration between the Center for Sustainable Practice in the Arts and the Arctic Cycle. So every other year, they commission 50 professional playwrights who represent all inhabited continents, as well as several cultures and Indigenous nations. They are commissioned to write 5-minute plays about an aspect of climate crisis based on a prompt. This year, the thematic prompt was envisioning a global Green New Deal. Our eco-design charrette takes these 50 plays and reads them all and responds to them with design seed concepts within an EcoScenography framework, which we will talk more about. But first of all, we want to build on what Ian introduced as Tanya Beer's principle of EcoScenography. This is just a quote directly from her website, which Ian did already speak about. So I'll leave that to you to read and take note of. And I'll speak a little bit more about our extension of this principle through our charrette. But first of all, we want to talk about what the word charrette means. Our understanding of the word is that it's a collaborative session in which designers try to pose a solution to a collective problem. And the problem that we're coming together around is climate change. And we're trying to envision a climate positive future through our design work. And we developed this concept centered around the Climate Change Theater Action plays. And we wanted to create an environment for these designers to innovate sustainable approaches to design and to begin putting these principles into practice through the generation of seed concepts, all building on Tanya Beer's definition of EcoScenography. A major component of the 2021 charrette, which is our second charrette, we did one in 2019, which was in person. Obviously this year we're focusing more on an online version of the charrette, and we've been lucky to join the Global Networked Learning, which is an exchange of students around the concept of EcoScenography in partnership with Ian at York University in Toronto, as well as Tanya Beer at the University of Melbourne in Australia, and Tessa Rickson at Queensland University of Technology in Australia. We're really lucky to offer the professional development opportunities that the Global Network Learning is presenting for students to our participants. They will be able to join weekly workshops, and they'll be able to learn from a broad range of approaches to EcoScenography and sustainable performance design. One of the highlights of our first charrette in 2019 was communal play readings and design discussions of the Climate Change Theater Action plays. We'll be continuing these readings online, and we're super thrilled to expand our community of reading by joining the larger international reading group of EcoScenographers, which is hosted by Tanya Beer herself. This reading group will continue to be an opportunity to gather that goes beyond the charrette period itself, and we'll be able to continue sharing resources with our participants, students who are involved, as well as a larger international community. I would encourage anyone who's interested to join this reading group. registration has just opened for the October session. These reading groups are intended to happen every month, and the October session will be focused on transformation and imagination. It is happening on Wednesday, October 20th at 8:30 p.m. Toronto time. And it will feature different performance designer panelists who will be discussing 3 specific plays from the Climate Change Theatre Action Festival. I will put in the chat a link to this registration page so that anyone interested can join us. We'll do that at the end.
Thanks, Alex. So now we just want to talk to you a little bit about our past eco design charrette that we hosted in 2019, as partially just to expose you to what we did, but also to present on some of the panelists who and workshop hosts who we were lucky to host in 2019, who all represent a very broad range of approaches to eco design or EcoScenography, and we'll hop right into it. So our 2019 charrette took place over 3 weeks. We hosted 12 workshops and panels, and we read 50 plays, and we created 50 design seed concepts over that period of 3 weeks. So our goals, that we wanted to create a welcoming open studio space that allowed for experimentation, contemplation, research, and discovery of the multifaceted definition of EcoScenography. So the creation of the seed concepts was an open prompt. We hoped that the workshops would inform different approaches, but we wanted to maintain that there's no one way to do EcoScenography. So now we're going to show you some of the community that we brought together and introduce you to all these exciting artists. This year, we've doubled our amount of participants. We've extended from 3 weeks to 3 months. So this is just a little encapsulation of perhaps what we can accomplish this time around. So we hosted Aisha Bentham to perform her immersive performance, Movements with My Ancestors, which was a lunchtime performance. What Movement with My Ancestors is an improvisational performance piece where Aisha prepared a vegan meal for her audience, utilizing locally sourced ingredients and drawing on recipes and from inspiration from her own history, heritage, and her relationship to food and culture. So our charrette participants were able to witness her preparing each meal while taking in the sounds and smell of the foods, as well as incense and scented candles that she burned. And Aisha adorned her prep station with printed textiles and decor to draw the audience into a place of familiarity, questioning, and joy. And she invited us to share in the prepared meals and engage in dialogue around our sensory experience. So that was thrilling to have this sort of food performance right there with us in our studio. And you can see like how inspired Aisha's prep station was. And that top view, you can see her oracle cards, which were very important to her to have with her at her prep station.
Another workshop that we hosted in 2019 was with designer Aisha Bentham. She has a 40+ year career designing from a shoestring budget to a huge operatic international budget. And she wanted to bring participants the concept of exploring unit sets, which is an approach that she's applied to many of her opera designs in the past. And the idea of this is to take components from one production and use them in another production in a whole different way. This was super thrilling to apply to our readings of the short plays. We actually got together in groups and in one space designed 3 different of these plays, reusing certain elements. Yeah, it was really cool to have her join us and bring her expertise and open-minded material approach to EcoScenography.
Next, we hosted the New York-based designer Danielle Worley to lead a 2-day-long workshop on sustainable model making, which was as transformative as it was informative. So she came in and essentially changed the way that designers approach model building. She came in with plain facts, like a thin piece of foam core, which is one of our primary materials for model making, takes about 50 years to break down. And there's no good reason, in her opinion, to use toxic substances to build models. So she showed us all how to create model boxes quickly and to a high professional standard using found and upcycled materials. So our model boxes were instead made of cardboard and faced with dark paper. And she showed us how to use printed elements to avoid using toxic adhesives or toxic varnishes and paints. And really just showed us that there's no reason to not apply our principles even at the small scale of our own model making. And so that was just a really empowering, like, quick new tool for our tool set to learn, like, okay, wait, we don't need to incorporate plastics or foam core or any substance that is not designed with sustainability in mind.
We also hosted Ian Garrett himself to do a workshop on immersive landscapes. This was a whole new world for our participants because it was focusing on 360 and VR video technology and applying that to the landscape that we were in as a way to enter into these short plays. So Ian's work with immersive landscapes uses a variety of analog and virtual technologies. The session we did considered how exploring wider socio-ecological factors of place from new non-human perspectives can lead to a renewed investigation of scenographic materials, processes, aesthetics, roles, and partnerships that can also guide a positive future. So we together looked at the creation of site-specific performance mediated through these immersive technologies, working between the absence of what we imagine the space to be and the material evidence of its proper and present uses.
Next, we want to highlight a really exciting two-day workshop hosted by Joel Ong and Mick Rousseau called The Participatory Microbial Mise en Scène. So this was a totally wild but really fascinating workshop that used scientific observation techniques combined with theatrical tools to grow a microbial stage to show the interconnectedness of microscopic living organisms. So the first part of this workshop, as I recall it, was about having an interaction with nature and with our natural environment. So using our hands and, you know, having some kind of physical interaction of touch. And then what we encountered in our environment, we then were able to sort of plate and grow on Petri dishes. So we learned about sort of rudimentary visualization techniques of like the human microbiome through plating Petri dishes with swabs from our bodies and growing what was living on our skin. So it was a quite interesting collaboration between science and art, and an amazing way to visualize the profound effects small encounters can have on a microbial scale.
Another workshop we hosted was facilitated by Sean Kerwin, a sonographer and professor. She took us through a more metaphorical space and conceptual investigation of the real life concerns of the contemporary artist in regards to sustainable careers and how we can play together to innovate solution proposing to envision a different way of operating within our artistic careers. We started our time together building spaghetti and marshmallow sculptures, applying all of our outside the box creativity and engineering ingenuity to this classic workshop game. After the warm-up exercise, we continued to apply this explorative and open approach to analyzing and imagining how precarious structures can be found in our world through objects in the studio. The physical creation of these structures led to an open conversation about systems and trying to think about how to similarly critique and analyze and expand these systems to support sustainable careers, lives, and communities.
Next, we were lucky to host artist and designer Sage Paul to lead a reflection on how participants' personal values can shape and ground their businesses as well as their designs. Sage Paul is an urban Dene woman and a member of the English River First Nation. She's based in Toronto, and she's an award-winning designer and recognized leader of Indigenous fashion, craft, and costume design. And she champions family, sovereignty, and resistance for balance. So she spoke to the charrette designers about committing to values-led business and decision-making, and she included numerous examples from her own experience as a designer and as an artistic director. And Sage led a personal reflective process that encouraged each designer to identify the values they hold innately, and then to analyze where and how those values align with their day-to-day work and where they did not align. Her workshop focused on creating a personal connection to the sustainable design skills developed during the charrette so that they hold fast as a vital aspect of the design process during both thick and thin times. And she was also critical of the cachet word sustainability and how it's used. And she introduced us to the ideas and dangers of greenwashing. So really just encouraging us to all be critical and to sort of hold these values close and as essential to our artistic practice.
Another theoretical workshop that we hosted was led by Mohammadat Ahmadi. She presented her doctoral research on how contemporary theater responds to the scale and complexity of current ecological challenges. She introduced the concept of eco-dramaturgy, and she presented her original and provocative take on producing theater within the Anthropocene. The conceptual thrust of her presentation was that in this current time of ecological crisis, theater needs to essentially engage with the materiality, physicality, and global scale of climate change through an eco-critical lens, through all dramatic work, not just plays like the ones we're reading, which are conceptually and thematically based on climate change. In this way, she prompts the participants to consider how theater staging of the interactions between humans and non-human actors, rather than just exclusively human-to-human drama, can be useful to referring and reframing our collective path forward into a future where humanity is reckoning with environmental chaos on a daily basis, almost like a rehearsal room for what we're experiencing in the world at large. She suggested that perhaps within this framework, theater in the Anthropocene can be a model for humanity in the escalating climate crisis.
Next, we were happy to host a design exchange with the UK-based designers Mona Castell and Andrea Carr. I think I saw Mona in the room today. So Mona and Andrea zoomed in and gave our ecological design charrette participants a tour of their own eco-design work and practices about EcoScenography in action. So they provided project-based examples about how they're able to bring the practice of eco-design down to earth and provide participants with practical steps and accentuated the possibilities. So you can see how exciting the work that they created through upcycling materials and renewable living materials. You can see the gnome on the left, and on the right, there's these really exciting upcycled costumes.
Another exchange that we hosted by Zoom, which is foreshadowing of our current Zoom-based second charrette, was with Anne-Catherine Lebeau and Devin Hardy. Anne-Catherine is here today, and she'll be talking more about EcoScenography, her Montreal-based company. It supports the circulation of material and resources between cultural organizations and the dissemination of best environmental production practices. This was an excellent opportunity for our Toronto-based charrette participants to exchange with Montreal, where there's quite a movement of EcoScenography and resource sharing that we aspire to in Toronto. So we were able to exchange our best practices as localized to our cities and dream of a time where we would exchange further across the country and the world. I'm really excited to have Anne-Catherine talk more about where EcoScenography has gone in the past couple of years.
And next, we were lucky to host Hunter Cardinal of Nehiyawin, he's a co-founder of Nehiyawin, and he gave us a presentation on the subject of land acknowledgements in Canada, specifically in performance settings. So Hunter is an actor, artist, and storyteller, and his company, Naheowin is an Edmonton-based agency that offers sustainable, practical, and Indigenous-based solutions for the improvement of diversity and inclusion in all businesses. So Hunter covered the origins of land acknowledgements and the complicated nature of national and local discourse surrounding this contemporary practice. And he invited participants to discuss their own experiences with these statements, to ask questions of each other about best practices and terminology, and to deeply and candidly consider our relationship to the places that we live and create. And Hunter recommended speaking genuinely about your connection to the place that you find yourself as a starting point, which took hold of the group's imagination and made the practice of acknowledging the land more approachable and personal. And Hunter's own artistic foundation was a great addition to just bring the relationship to place into relationship with the art that we create.
We also were able to feature the work of an artist as part of our charrette who's zooming in from Europe. She kind of moves around and works around in many ways in Europe. Her name is Julie Stern, and she presented a talk on the intersection between art and environment and how that has influenced her artistic practice between design for the stage, but also sculptural work. This is an image of one of her sculptures, which uses specifically upcycled materials. And she discussed her process, inspiration, and how she comes to realize these beautiful pieces of art. I'm really excited that Yulia is joining us again this year as a participant, and that she's continuing to cultivate this international community of designers working at the intersection of arts and entertainment, which has really become the theme of this second global online charrette. We've been able to reach more people more widely in the world who are wanting to exchange at this point of intersection. And Marie Renee, who will be speaking later, is another one of our participants who's joined the charrette this year and to feature her work in EcoScenography on this global scale. And we're very excited to have her.
So at this point, we just wanted to highlight for you some of the design scene concepts that were generated at the 2019 charrette. And you'll note that the aesthetics of what was generated is incredibly diverse and specific to each play. And part of what we're working on with the eco-design charrette is to challenge the idea that an eco-scenographic process is creatively limiting. And we hope these examples that we're presenting will help support this. And the scene concepts range from digital concept sketches to costume renderings, to models, watercolor paintings, prototypes, and even puppets. So on the left, you'll see a sort of a digital artwork. The play was Lila Pines for the Wolf by Abdul Razak, and the seed concept was by designer Kim Sue Bartnick. In the center, you can see two sketch models that were generated in studio at Triga's studio. You'll see design for the Rookery, designed by Andrew Nasturzio, and he used plastic bag waste to create sort of a garbage pile that he imagined sea lions would be occupying. And on the bottom center, you can see a seed concept for Miss Viola Evie Anderson by designer Katrina Carrier. And on the right, we have a costume rendering by Julia Nels for There Goes My Bow Tie with the Wind. A couple more examples of the seed concepts that were generated. On the left, you can see a beautiful costume concept rendering by Kristen Ahern. And Kristen is a charrette participant again this year, and she will be also a facilitator of a workshop through the Global Networked Learning course. And she'll be presenting on her Chicago-based company, Conscious Costume, which works to bring sustainable practices to the costume industry. She also is involved with labor advocacy and incorporating sustainable practices from the fashion industry into the performance design industry. So we really look forward to hearing more about her, and we hope you'll join us for that. And the concept on the right by designer Katrina Carrier for the play Lynn and Ash, which was conceptually about an artist who would carry their garbage with them. So she actually created this sort of wearable object in the studio. And here you can see even more diverse approaches. So on the left, we have a seed concept by designer Kim-Sue Bartnick for Derek Chua's steamy sessions in a Singapore spa. So you can see her incorporating like the corrugated cardboard and sort of found plastic in her, beautiful, elegant design, her sketch model. And then on the right, we have a concept by Julia Nels for the old woman who lived in a shoe. And these were puppets that she created, and she ended up creating a stop motion animation using these puppets, but she generated these out of sort of printed and found paper in studio. And all of these design works are featured in a publication for the 2019 sort of CCTA design book. And you can see that on the left, designer Kim-Sue Bartnick, her work is actually featured on the cover, which I'll show you on the next slide.
Yeah, and we're really excited to have a publication chronicling this first experience with the charrette, and we will hopefully be creating a similar publication for our current charrette, and we will be welcoming back a lot of returning participants, which Michelle already mentioned. Andrew will be coming back again, and we're hoping that Kim-Sue will be able to join us to help lead for participants in how to document work, because she really excelled in the first charrette. So we're really hoping to build community with every charrette and to share it more widely with the international community, as we are through this presentation, through the publications, and also through the exhibition at World Stage Design, which I will let Ian speak more about, and then introduce you to our other speakers.
So this is the summary of our current charrette. And if you'd like to join us, please reach out. We'll put our email in the chat. But yeah, I think we'll hand it over to Ian. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for adapting to my upper respiratory woes in the moment. Meant to do more full introduction, but that also gives us a good chance, because we have yet to, from the World Stage Design organizational side, we've been going through programming. It's gone through a couple of rounds of review, but we have yet to announce a program. But this does give a good sampling of sort of the breadth of the type of projects that might happen when that comes together, making no promises whether or not one or the other comes together. This program is definitely happening now. So if you're interested in being involved now, this is meant to be, I've sort of referred to them as sort of a tentpole project within each of the different areas of focus for World Stage Design, as we bridge from the original dates of this past year until the upcoming August gathering in Calgary. As was mentioned, if you're interested in seeing what the outcomes of are this design charrette, whether or not you're involved with them or not, we will be looking at having a special exhibition within the, referring to World Stage Design as an exhibition is sort of a misnomer, because it's really a number of exhibitions between the design exhibition and the Technical Innovation Prize and the architecture competition. And also we'll be finding a way to feature the design seed concepts generated out of this charrette project at that time as well, in addition to the publication, which will come out. Some of that programming as well, and some of the way that things have been working here within Canada reflect, or I'd say not even reflect, but are led by organizations like EcoScenography, which in a moment, one moment. There we go. In a moment, I will turn it over to my colleague Anne-Catherine Lebeau, who leads EcoScenography. Some of you may have been introduced to some of the thinking around some of their work. Actually, if you attended the Prague Quadrennial in this last iteration as a number of those ideas actually appeared within the Quebec exhibition, which will also be making a return within the program for World Stage Design as part of the EcoScenography program. Anne-Catherine has collaborated on dozens of innovative projects across many different fields and many different entities, including multiple Cirque du Soleil and Eloise and Ex Machina with Lepage, but is now leading EcoSceno, which has really taken up leadership in the ideas of how we can creatively reuse scenography, not just in terms of waste diversion and those practical matters, but also in the creative and imaginative approach to that. And I might turn it over to you, Anne-Catherine, to take us a little bit through how EcoSceno works.
Yes, thank you very much, Ian. I'm very, very pleased to be here and meet you all today. We have been working on EcoSceno for almost 2 years now. And as Ian just mentioned, it was born from actually the Prague exhibition, the Quebec part of the Prague exhibition that was led by my colleague and co-founder, the scenographer, Jasmine Catudal, who gathered together for the Prague exhibition in 2019, the scenographers from Quebec, and asking the questions of what happens after the show with scenography. And that's how we've met with Marie-Renée Bourget-Harvey, that you'll be that will speak after, and was is very, very inspiring to us, and also is teaching classes of eco-design with us at EcoSceno. So I have a small presentation that I can share to give you some images of what we're doing. So we're based in Montreal, as Ian was saying. And here goes with my presentation. So I'll go in presentation mode. So really the goal of EcoSceno first, it's a nonprofit that was created in October 2019. So most of our existence has been going on during the pandemic, but we have found that the pandemic is actually was and is unfortunately still a time where people really were able to stop and think about how they're doing their work and how they would like to do it better. So our mission is really to reduce the environmental impact of cultural production. I was trained as an actor. I worked as an actor, as a translator, and then I did a master's degree in management and arts management that allowed me to come up with this new organization. And we both, we work in two axes. So one being reuse. We have a growing warehouse in Montreal. We started with 1,000 square feet. Now we're at 2,000 square feet, and we're considering having 4,000 during this year. So it's the cultural producers in Montreal and scenographers are very, very, very much interested and keen in reusing and making sure that what they've created doesn't end up in the garbage at the end, but is rather put in a place where it can be reused by new scenographers. I have a note about that. It's really important for us that things are not recognizable. We really want to make sure that scenographers and producers can reuse material, but not concepts. So we're very, very careful with that. And we also have an axis, which is eco-design, where we work with different groups in helping them create in a more sustainable way. So who are we? We were 3 in July 2020, and we are now 10. So this is a picture of us at the warehouse in Montreal. I have to say I'm very proud of this picture because I feel the energy coming out of the team, and it's really it gives us a lot of energy to know that what we're building and what we're putting in place in Montreal has a lot of meaning and is very coherent for a lot of people. So this is a picture of the warehouse, and since a little less than 2 years now, we were able to not only divert 194 tons of materials from landfill, but this is actually the quantity that we were able to make sure it's being reused in the community. So it's open to the public, but it's also like more specifically for the cultural industry. But it's not only for theater or for circus. It often happens that a set that was pieces of material that were used on a movie are reused in theater, and so on and so forth. It also happens that pieces of material are bought from us, used in a production, then they come back to us, then they're reused in another production, and really, and that's really what we mean to do and to have exist in Montreal. So we have an online shop. So we use a lot the social media to put forward what we have, and we try to have scenographers and creators think in a way where you why not start your concept with what already exists and what's available rather than with a blank page. So we also have a carbon neutral delivery system. Now it's covering the eastern part of Montreal. And also we're working on using modeling to promote reuse, because a lot of the things we receive are very specific, and it's hard from a single picture to understand what it is. So we've been using SketchUp for a few months now, and it works very, very well, where designers can actually use the SketchUp warehouse and try to use the different set pieces in their design. So, whoops. Yeah, okay, so this is just a bit of stats. So we've did from the beginning, we have been doing like 21 trainings. We do training sessions with, we have started this year to do training sessions within organizations, and also with bringing together 2 or 3 organizations to have them together come up with new ideas, new ways of working together to improve the environmental impacts of the production. So the eco-design counseling is really that we are there from the very beginning of a creation process in the first production meetings until the very end, to really understand what the concept is all about and to help realize this concept in a more environmental friendly way. So this is some shows we've worked on. Margherita Disciples here is a circus show that is very small scale, that goes in schools and in circus festivals, and all of their set is built from reused materials, the costumes as well, and they also produce their own energy during the show to have to generate music and so on and so forth. So there's also a small video you can find on our YouTube channel about their process and other events that we've hosted and that are still available. And these are 2 other sets you can that we've worked on. So really what we aim to show as well is that, well, the second one, Les Enfants, that you find on the lowercase is a design by Marie-Renée that you will hear from in a few minutes. So, and that brings me to the idea that really it's very important for us to put forward that you can do that making sustainable choices does not necessarily need to be evident when you see the show. You can really work in a way that it's going to be a scenography as you would do your usual scenographies, but just thinking about how you do it in a different way. So we will be hosting a workshop that we already did at the Carrefour International de Théâtre de Québec in last May. So it's called The Creativity of Reuse. And it's really, we use SketchUp, and we gather together a bunch of 12 to 15 professionals, and we have them design from what already exists, but using the SketchUp platform. And yeah, and you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And so that covers pretty much the activities we do in a very general way. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you would have on the model. We were very inspired by La Ressource des Arts in Paris, and also by Julie's, all the work that Julie's Bicycle is doing. And we are now working in also the training sessions have been very, very popular in Quebec. So we're thinking about, for the moment, most of our services are offered only in French, and we're working in translating everything to make it more available to a wider public.
In fact, you're working on translating one of those workshops into English for the charrette / the class that was mentioned before. They all sort of start weaving together.
Exactly. So we are working on the SketchUp class that we will be hosting in November, in link with how do you call it, the global network learning. Yeah. So yeah, we're very happy about that. And we also do the English training at the National Theatre School here in Montreal.
Well, to give some time to the French language and its importance within working within Canada, I actually want to transition us over to EcoScenographer Margherita Disciples. I'm butchering the French. I know that I am. Who is a delightful and very accommodating, to at least my French pronunciation, French-Canadian scenographer who's passionate about integrating sustainability and poetry at the heart of her artistic approach. Though, as I understand, in being brought into the exhibition from Quebec in the last PQ exhibition, had just been working in this way and hadn't necessarily identified that specifically as a practice. But she seeks to erase the boundaries between her personal and professional values to create impactful and necessary reconciliation. And so I'd like to turn it over to Marie-Renée.
Bonjour, hi. Yeah, I will speak in French because my English is so bad. Sorry, so I speak in French.
You've heard what I just did. There's no need to apologize.
Yeah, thanks. Donc, je vais commencer et je suis désolée parce que j'ai l'impression que les sous-titres seront affreux par rapport à ce que je vais dire. Donc, je me présente, Marie-Renée Bourget-Harvey. Je trouve ça toujours difficile de me présenter. Je suis graphic designer graphique à l'origine. J'ai travaillé en anthropologie, j'ai étudié en anthropologie, en art visuel et j'ai atterri en scénographie. Je trouve ça très, très drôle, les sous-titres. Donc, c'est ça. Mais ça ne comblait pas ce que je voulais faire dans la vie ou ça comblait pas mes valeurs. Donc, j'ai commencé à étudier davantage en design de bâtiments écologiques et en permaculture. Et en ce moment, je travaille en recherche et développement grâce à EcoScenography sur des matières innovantes qui sont quelque chose de complètement innovant et complètement fascinant. Donc, je vais vous partager des petites images. Ça va vous aider puisque si la plupart ne peuvent pas me comprendre. Donc, on va commencer. Oui, donc, avant tout, je tenais à vous dire que moi, ce qui m'a aidé, puis ce que je me rends compte, c'est toute ma pratique a été et est en fonction de mes valeurs, mais je ne m'en rendais pas compte avant il y a très, très peu de temps. Mais ce que je me suis rendu compte, en fait, c'est qu'il y a eu un déclic dans ma vie personnelle et professionnelle quand j'ai commencé à penser autrement, quand j'ai commencé à voir les choses autrement. Mon Dieu, je suis désolée pour... I'm so sorry for the translation because I see that and it feel like I'm crazy. Sorry for the translation. Yeah. So, donc, c'est ça. C'est quand j'ai commencé à me dire, mon Dieu, mais qu'est-ce que c'est la matière? Ce qu'on me présente comme un bout de bois, un 2x4 inerte, en fait, c'est du vivant. C'est un arbre. Et donc, j'ai l'impression que quand on désincarne les choses, on a de la difficulté à les respecter et en prendre soin. Donc, un bout de bois, ce n'est pas un bout de bois, c'est un arbre. Et un arbre, ce n'est pas un arbre, c'est ce qui fait partie d'un écosystème et qui nous rend service. Donc, il y avait toute cette façon-là de voir qui m'a aidé à accélérer le mouvement et que je me suis rendu compte, en fait, qu'avant de réussir à faire des actions concrètes puis à changer notre manière de voir, il faut complètement changer nos croyances puis nos pensées et se demander à quoi je peux contribuer, qu'est-ce que je nourris par mes actions au quotidien, puis qu'est-ce que mon environnement a à offrir. Je vais vous présenter quelques petites choses, quelques petits projets sur lesquels j'ai travaillé pour vous montrer un peu les démarches. On est parti pour un projet au Musée des Beaux-Arts de Québec, qui est un projet pour les enfants, puis on a décidé à partir de là, de partir de l'objet pour créer. Donc, tous les objets étaient principalement en bois et ceux qui étaient en plastique dataient de plusieurs dizaines d'années pour être certain qu'il n'y avait plus d'émanation. Donc, on a travaillé à partir de l'objet pour le travailler, pour lui changer toute cette idée-là, toute cette vision différente. Puis, on a aussi demandé au public de nous donner le contenu de tout ce qui traînait chez eux, qui ne savaient pas quoi faire. Puis, on les a réassemblés pour créer quelque chose de ludique et de sympathique, disons-le. Donc, on a créé plein de petites scénettes et on a réintégré ça dans le milieu de l'exposition. Puis simplement vous dire aussi qu'on a travaillé avec le Musée des Beaux-Arts pour que même le principe créatif fût extrêmement différent. Donc, on partait de l'objet et parfois, on devait transformer nos idées pour s'adapter aux nouveaux objets. Ce qui donnait quelque chose comme ce genre de projet-là en intégration qui pouvait qui pouvait à l'origine de l'idée faire peur, est devenu un projet extrêmement rassembleur. Même chose ici, tous les petits détails de ce qu'on pouvait faire provenaient d'objets du quotidien et a très, très bien fonctionné, en fait. Ce qui est magnifique aussi, c'est que tout ce qu'on a utilisé a trouvé preneur après. Donc, nous avons utilisé que des matériaux usagés et tous ces matériaux, puisqu'ils étaient assemblés de manière mécanique, ont pu trouver preneur et en fait, seulement 3 chaises n'ont pas pu être recyclées à la fin du projet.
Marie-Renée, on
Oui.
voit pas les autres, on voit pas les images sur ton PowerPoint. On est encore
pour vrai?
Oui, c'est ça.
Oh, non, attends, ça pas là. Je vais départager, puis on va... Attendez. On va recommencer. Est-ce que là, tu vois? Est-ce que ça bouge? Ah, oui, attends, je vais recommencer. OK. Donc, tu étais partie, c'est quoi qui avait figé?
L'arbre puis le 2x4.
Merci, Anne-Catherine. Donc, tout ça pour dire que c'était l'idée d'un écosystème. Merci beaucoup, Anne-Catherine. On était parti, donc je résume, on est parti d'objets qu'on a transformés, qu'on a assemblés, on a demandé aux gens de nous fournir des objets, puis tout ça a créé d'autres choses. Et quand on a assemblé au musée, tout cela a créé, c'est plus facile de suivre hein, ce que je dis, sinon c'est un peu plat. Donc, merci beaucoup Anne-Catherine. Tout ça a créé en fait des objets ludiques qui étaient très, très accessibles et tout a pu être récupéré à la fin du projet. Je suis désolée, on repart. New project. On m'a confié un petit espace à l'extérieur pour une scénographie. Puis, 3 semaines après que j'ai accepté, l'espace a multiplié par 10. C'était devenu tout l'espace au complet sur 3 étages. Pour faire cela, on a décidé avec la metteur en scène de combiner deux productions antérieures qui allaient partir en tournée. On les a détournées, puis on a construit quelques petites choses pour agrémenter afin de créer un espace extérieur, puis tout ce qu'on a construit de nouveau devait pouvoir avoir une vie utile. Donc, devait pouvoir soit se démonter ou pouvoir se retrouver dans la vie des gens au quotidien. Donc, on a créé des balançoires, des maisonnettes pour enfants, et tout ça a trouvé preneur à la fin. Et encore plus, il y a des choses qu'on a créées pour être certaines qui se désassemblent, comme ces fleurs-là, on a pu toutes les démonter. Elles existent encore, puis elles ont fait partie de plusieurs installations artistiques par la suite. On a pu les prêter, puis la prochaine fois qu'on veut les utiliser, ils sont déjà sur des filets. Tout est très, très facile à réutiliser. Ça fait partie d'un des décors qui a été réutilisé. Et ce qui est incroyable, c'est qu'on a donné aussi les matières après et ça s'est retrouvé chez les gens. Donc, ici, il y a des gens qui ont construit des clôtures, des galeries avec les matériaux qu'on leur a donnés. Donc, le théâtre s'est rendu directement chez les gens dans la communauté. Et ça, c'est quelque chose sur lequel je mets beaucoup d'énergie, de créer en fait un pedigree des matériaux, soit d'utiliser des matériaux sans COV, des matériaux extérieurs, des matériaux qui peuvent aller autant à l'extérieur qu'à l'intérieur pour permettre le réemploi le plus facile et aussi d'utiliser de la quincaillerie qui ne subira pas les intempéries, donc pour faciliter le réemploi. Next project, la forêt de Forest. C'est un espace, en fait, on m'a confié un espace vide au centre-ville de Québec, en extérieur. Et ce projet-là, en fait, moi, ce qui a émergé, c'est de me dire qu'est-ce que j'aimerais qu'il soit là. Puis je pense que la scénographie, l'éco-conception, c'est ça. C'est de oser avoir de l'espoir, oser rêver, oser penser grand. Puis moi, je me suis dit, je veux une forêt, là. Je veux qu'il y ait des arbres. Je veux qu'on ait accès à des arbres au centre-ville. Donc, j'ai créé une forêt à partir d'arbres qui avaient été coupés déjà et qui s'en allaient dans ce que nous, on appelle un écocentre de la ville. Puis on a détourné les matières pendant un moment. On a aussi récupéré des cèdres qui étaient dans comment on dit ça? On dirait une autre installation artistique. Puis après, ils ont été replantés chez des gens. Et à la fin, ce qui est intéressant, c'est qu'à la fin, tous les arbres du projet ont été complètement compostés et ont enrichi la terre. Tous les éléments ont été récupérés aussi. Tout a été pensé pour être donné, pour créer, comme pour cette petite maisonnette-là, devenir une serre. Donc, c'est aussi cette idée-là de penser toujours au suivant. Anne-Catherine disait tantôt « and after », l'exposition, et après, qu'est-ce qu'on fait? Mais en fait, le après doit être complètement réfléchi dès le début. Next project. Tom à la ferme. Autre projet, en fait, très intéressant où on n'a que loué les structures de base, dont la structure, puis on a habillé, mais on s'est permis de ne pas de jamais s'enlever le côté créatif, mais de que réutiliser ce qui existait déjà, puis de redonner après. Donc, on a seulement emprunté des matières pour les redonner par la suite, puis tout était usagé. Ce qui est extraordinaire, c'est que ça fait un fini qui ne peut pas exister autrement. Il n'y a pas une patine ou un coup de pinceau qui peut donner le même résultat qu'une centaine d'années sur du bois. Donc, il y avait tous ces détails-là qui étaient intéressants. Je voulais aussi vous parler en terminant de 2 projets. Je pense que d'agir différemment, ça nous mène à des endroits qu'on n'a pas planifiés. On m'a appelé parce que on m'a appelé parce que des gens disaient que c'était impossible de faire ce dont pourquoi on m'appelait. Donc, on m'a appelé pour une mission impossible. Pour le théâtre Diamant de Robert Lepage à Québec, on a voulu récupérer les vieilles structures. Puis, il a fallu les retaper, mais au lieu de donner ça à des architectes qui n'avaient pas la vision et qui ne voyaient pas la beauté à l'intérieur, on m'a appelé pour superviser une équipe où moi, j'avais l'impression que c'était un cadeau de me faire offrir ça. Et on a mis du temps, mis de l'énergie, on a pris soin de la matière afin de créer un lieu durable, en fait. Donc, parfois, on pense qu'on travaille seulement en théâtre ou dans des espaces fermés, éphémères, mais parfois, ce qu'on fait nous amène à créer des choses durables. Donc, je trouvais important de vous le montrer. Puis, je voulais vous dire aussi que pour moi, la cohérence est quelque chose d'extrêmement important. Puis, je voulais vous laisser sur des images je suis designer graphique. Et même quand j'ai l'opportunité d'avoir carte blanche pour créer des projets, je me permets d'être complètement cohérente et d'utiliser que des matières organiques. Donc, d'utiliser que des fleurs, que de la mousse, que du végétal, pour être certaine que ce que j'utilise est compostable, qu'il n'y a pas de produits chimiques. Donc, c'est un appel à la cohérence et à de prendre soin que je vous parle aujourd'hui. Donc, merci.
Merci. Thank you, and thank you to everybody for coming. I hope that it's given those who are looking forward to world stage design a sense of sort of the diverse approaches when we're talking about EcoScenography, of what it means to bring everything together. That's actually a question that I would like to lead us into, because we've got a little bit of time to converse here. And while I do want to highlight that there are additional ways of thinking about this that are going to be working their ways into the World Stage Design program, which I will mention before we wrap up the session today, I would the question that I have for those on the panel of coming at this from different directions, we've put everything into this banner of EcoScenography, but there's elements of like looking at everybody's practice, what everybody's doing to approach that, and the ways that there's creatively reusing and adapting individual materials either in your practice, or looking at the charrette programming from 2019, looking from the range from a more performance-based, like aesthetic performance, to you know, like that the microbial work of working with cultures fits within this as well. I wanted to open up a question about like the importance of like that expanse. Like, what does it mean to have an ecoscenographic lens that is thinking that widely? How has it changed your approach? Even though you might be working in a specific way, it might be influencing what you make, it might be influencing like the systems that you're working with. I'm coming at this in a really long way, But as designers now thinking ecologically and thinking about those environmental impacts, how has those sort of practical design, those practical elements of production influenced your design? And then in the reverse that I'd put for that is, and I'm directing this part of it more towards Anne-Catherine, with EcoSceno, which has been looking at more sustainable like material production practices, but design has been so integrated into that. How do those pull at each other within the conversation, working back beyond the typical limitations of just, you know, physics, theaters over specific sizes, etc.? Alex, it looked like you sheepishly put up a hand first.
I didn't mean to, but I'll go first.
Okay, go for it.
Premièrement, merci Marie-Renée et Anne-Catherine, c'était super intéressant. Puis je suis tellement intéressée par votre travail. Merci beaucoup. So I think to answer your question from my personal point of view as a sonographer, the thing that I have found this practicing of expanding my own understanding of ecoscenography, how it's influenced my creative process is that every creative challenge, whether it's budgetary or time or team and labor based, can be applied through an ecoscenography lens to be a creative gift and like actual inspiration point. So I think that the biggest thing that expanding my own personal definition of ecoscenography has offered me as an artist is the ability to see a constraint as an opportunity. And I love working that way. And I think working that way in theater is really important, but working that way in other industries and in life is equally important. And I think that that's the biggest circular benefit of working in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're there with you, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean,
or I might tip it to end.
I totally agree with what Alex just said, and like I'd say, I don't know if this is strictly an answer to your question, but like the challenge that I find as a designer who's not always the lead artist on a project is helping people to embrace these, helping like directors and other creative leads to embrace these challenges and embrace the artistic approach as inherent to the artistic product itself. Because finding that like that really direct connection between process and product is like the most inspiring thing to me, but it's not necessarily directors have been trained the way that they've been trained to think and work. So I think just like bringing the integration between materials and process and artistic intention is the most exciting challenge to me, that I can like bring artistic intention into my material choices and sell more holistic and more sustainable idea as a more exciting artistic product. Yeah, that's sort of my goals, but sometimes it's hard because sometimes production people know that you can get something on Amazon tomorrow, so why don't we just do that? And I guess just onboarding people into a more holistic conversation about process is where that push and pull comes in for me.
Moving to Montreal.
Yes, if I may. I totally agree with what has been said by our colleagues at Chiga, and that's why it was very important for us at EcoScenography not only to put on a reuse center, but also to have the training and also to be able to accompany and support the eco-design transition, because reusing material is kind of technical, but what really changes everything is the meaning and the coherence that it has with creating art. And for us, art is and culture are an area that's so important in the ecological transition, and that has to lead the way in a sense. And also it makes ideas and concepts visible. So that's why for us, like eco-design and making sure the material is available, really, well, they don't necessarily need to be linked together, but it's for us, it creates like it brings together the means to do it, and also the meaning of it all. If I don't know if that is completely clear in English. Okay, thank you, Alex. But yeah, so that's why for us it was very, very important to change things. And Montreal is a very nice size of a city to do that, I think, because we kind of know more or less everybody in a sense. And it's the same clients that we're giving trainings to. They're coming and we use materials. And so it's very, it makes a lot of sense to make it all together, and it makes it more powerful in our experience here at EcoScenography.
Don't worry. I was just telling myself that I was muted while I was muted. That's what you missed me saying. But I was going to ask if Marie Renee had had wanted to also think about how it has changed your practice and the amount of materials that you bring in from other sources, and the way that you were talking about that sort of reuse of sort of, I know you were talking about this in your presentation, but how, like, what has been the core of sort of the transition for that pull in either direction? And you may, and do not answer me in English if you,
I would try in English, but I'm not sure that I understand well your question. Can you repeat, please?
Just how the level of material reuse that you addressed this a lot in your presentation, but how the level of reuse and sort of your finding of objects and bring those back in, like, is there a way that you overall have seen it change, like, your design outlook, or how you start to approach a process, or your practice, or how it's
it depends of the project, and more with it depends with who I work, because if the people is not open, it's difficult to bring new ideas. So when people are open, I like to work with sorry, because I speak I speak Spanish too, so Spanish is my third language, so it's so hard. So I begin, sorry, it's so hard.
It's an international group.
It's like three language in my head, so it's fucked up a little bit. So okay. When it's possible, I start with what is there. Yeah, where is the resources, and what can I do with them? But I also create without limits, because the ideas is so important in the sense. So I am able to process. Sorry, it's so tough. So en français, je vais essayer en français. En fait, souvent, je préfère travailler avec l'idée, mais en restant complètement ouverte à ce qui est disponible. Donc, tout se mélange en même temps. Donc, I start with the ideas, but I am awake and I am able to see in the same time where are the resources, les ressources, et de tout mélanger ça en même temps. J'ai l'impression que ça fait tellement d'années que je travaille de cette manière-là que tout ça se passe en même temps. Mais la chose la plus importante, c'est que since I work, it's important to me that you don't see that I use sustainability object. It's important to me because I think it's the best ways to bring more people in that transition, to see, look, this is beautiful. And you don't see, I have a trick, you don't see that it's sustainable. So I think for the transition, not always, but for the transition, it's a way to bring more people in that way.
You sort of led directly. Well, you actually led directly into the question that I had. Every bit, and I would say I bet I am in the minority of people on the call who cannot operate. At least in a spoken way, in more than one language. So more people in this session than not know exactly. This is why I was asked to slow down my talking earlier. As we work towards our default. But you led actually directly into sort of like the question that I wanted to bring back into things, because you really highlight the importance of like an ecological approach, like ecological as in like thinking about where everything is coming from, the small to large, like the entire system of it, while also like bringing people on board, because it sort of gets to an idea sort of resistance that someone might have in the transition because they don't like working that way, or they don't like it being obviously like that. They don't want to be confined to that. And so the other question that I want to sort of bring back the other way that you've both brought up and sort of started to address is like, how do you start to work with the like exchanging your values in working in this ecological thinking? Like what is like, I don't know, can you think of it in a either a time, if you want to root it in a specific experience, but how do you we work a lot with this idea of exchanging our values, whether or not we want to say something on stage that's ecological or sustainable explicitly, or have that be apparent, or if we want to work with materials in that way that is apparent or not within that. And sort of what's your decision-making process, or how do you support, and Catherine Moore, and sort of how does EcoSceno support someone in making that decision-making process? Because I think that one of the things that we can have if we're labeled as thinking ecoscenographically or thinking about sustainability is like, there's like a mental image of that. So how do you sort of negotiate those relationships that you're talking about, Marie-Renee, of like making sure that people are on side with that sort of transition into that way of working?
Yeah, I think we can force people to change is the first thing. So if we make action and we demonstrate that it's easy, not easy like, oh, it's so easy, but it's fun and it's bring sense and meaning, it's meaningful, it's more, it's easier to bring people with you. So I think it's be the change. I think it's the only thing. It's the thing that I make. It's for me. It's easier to do it, and to when you do it, you give the opportunity to the other to change and to see that another way to think it's possible, another way to take action it's possible. So I think it's that. I think formation, not formation, sorry, formation. I think sharing what you learn. We don't have the time to keep the things only for us. It's not a way to work. So we have to share, take care and share. I think it's that. So it's it's important to me to take action and and to do it with I don't know how to say it, but with an open heart and open mind with everybody, and more with people that they are not in your process.
Right. I mean, I think I'd see that a lot in the playfulness of it, like, and that approach, that it's like clever and playful. I might turn that also to bring it over back to Triga as well, as other designers working in this approach. Where do you how do you see that sense of play? Because it seems like a lot of the charrette too is about like playing with different approaches to how to think about your practice.
Yeah. Well, just to go back to like exchanging values, or like we as Triga, we are very forward with our values of sustainability and wanting to bring that into that process. However, we get most of our jobs through our profiles as individual artists. And what we've gotten pretty good at is being offered jobs as individual designers with the reputation and transitioning them into Triga projects. So just bringing our approach, but like that's not necessarily the reputation by which we get our job. We get our job for creating exciting live experiences, for like, creating interesting art, or like something that you actually want to be a part of. And then behind, like, not necessarily as like a sneak, but like we when we're offered new jobs, we tell them we want to approach them with specific lens, and that's kind of how we end up onboarding people into a sustainable process. It's not, people don't necessarily hire us because we say we're green. A lot of people want us to talk about our sustainable design work, but people don't necessarily always want to hire Triga because they want, they just want exciting art. So I think that Marie-Renée brought up a really good point where she wants to draw people into the art and to the excitement, and like, where, so there's that. And also the play of the eco-design charrette, I think that that's sort of the success of it, is that we're bringing a bunch of designers together, and our play readings and design discussions are essentially just jam sessions. And they're really fun. And they're like, we come up with ideas super rapidly. Maybe they don't go as deep as we would like them to, but it's playful, and it's just like, you get 10 people in a Zoom call or in a room, and all of a sudden you come up with like a handful of really exciting design ideas, and like any of which we would love to execute and fully develop.
Yeah, I think I would build on the playful nature of the industry we work in, as being the foundation of the impact that eco-scenography can have, is that I think the conversation about climate change can be not so playful of a topic, but if you, like Marie-Renée said, are engaging people in experiences that are playful and joyful and fun and immersive and provocative, and you can tell people that climate change doesn't need to be a heavy conversation. It can be a well-integrated, holistic conversation that impacts the decisions you make in your life. And I think art has a great way of changing minds through the audiences that it builds. And then in specific to the charrette, I would say that the biggest thing that we're trying to do for our designers is the same thing as we are for our audiences when we design as Triga from a sustainable point of view, which is that we're trying to say your participation is most important. You don't need to solve the problem of climate change as a designer. You just need to partake in a conversation about a different future that we can all share. And so we really try to take the pressure off of our participant designers to say, you need to come out with a fully fleshed box office breaking design. We take that away completely, and we say, these are 5-minute plays. We want to hear your first idea, your first instinct, and we want you to challenge yourself to imagine a different way of operating that doesn't need to be tested in any way, shape, or form. It's practice, it's play, and it should be full of joy and excitement. And so I guess for me, that's a healing act as a citizen and also as an artist. And it's something that I hope my work on a larger scale as a designer is also encouraging audience and the average citizen to try.
Thank you.
No problem.
And Catherine, how have you seen that sort of expressed? Because I think about, you know, the workshops that I've seen, I've yet to partake in them, but that EcoSceno has arranged, but particularly around like the SketchUp one, because I've seen some of the results of that, and that they're like similar, like the rearrangement of objects can be really delightful. But like, are you seeing that also from the as an engagement strategy? For people starting to talk about like the more practical of like, we got to move this material around, but like that sense of play, is that engaging people in a different way than you might otherwise have seen?
Yes, I would say so, definitely. We actually, what people are telling us in Montreal is that it's been at least 10 years that they need to be skilled to work differently, and they don't understand how to do it. And there's nothing in place, no structure in place to help them transition to a new mode. So whatever we, what we propose generally, like people get very, very excited about it. And the SketchUp models we put on whenever we put out a new SketchUp model, it's sold in a few minutes. Just saying that people are really eager to work in new ways. And the SketchUp workshop that you are mentioning was very popular, and we had since it was on Zoom, there were like registrations from Paris in the workshop that was like in Quebec City. So we really feel a strong buzz. And also SketchUp is not used by everybody, so it's the first one we did because Marianne from our team is very, very much into SketchUp and very excited about it. So we also go from what makes people in our team excited to like transmit new ways of doing things. But in terms of just now, we're thinking about doing a new workshop on how to use the producer's own inventory to promote reuse. And it seems, you know, it would have seemed for us at the beginning to be something basic, but actually working with several theaters and theater schools, we realized that sometimes, well, very often people don't know what they have in stock, and that if you want to promote reuse in your own institution, you have to have a very good and very efficient inventory, which is not necessarily like the most exciting thing, but people do get excited when you put them around a table and you have them do some brainstorming on how can we make inventories better to promote reuse. So we're mostly very excited about what we're doing, and we find that it resonates in people, I could say.
Thank you. I have one more question, but I want to open it up for those who might be attending from the Congress while we still have some time. If there's any questions from the audience. My last question is a lot less rambly than my previous questions. It's a very direct question. Let's see if the hands popped up. Then it's always tricky with Zoom. All right, this might send us in a direction though, and this might be a question that a lot of people have on their minds. Let's say that it is. We are, or Andrea, did you have a question? You popped up on my screen.
Well, just to celebrate all the diversity and wonderful contributions that I've been sitting here. I've been writing loads of notes because I'm really, really interested in not only the personal contributions we're all making, but the systemic change and the paradigm shift that, you know, is so needed and that we're all involved in our different ways. So yeah, I just wanted to appreciate being here really, and also all the sharing and sort of like almost like opening up some of the kind of more closed areas, you know, the mystique of the design, or something about the hierarchy of a director at the top and somebody here and somebody here. Something about this spirit of sharing seems really important now in the face of climate change and other global oppressions and structural discrimination, that we kind of like sit around the big table and come together in our different communities. So I guess I just wanted to, I don't know, articulate that and share some joy about it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Also for your own contribution to that as well. Having participated in the charrette and thinking around EcoScenography as well. So the question that I think will sort of take us to a point of a little bit more housekeeping a bit is all of our panelists are part of the group that is helping to determine the EcoScenography program at World Stage Design. That's why we're gathered today. So though we haven't necessarily said, this is what you're going to do in Calgary, you have gotten a sense of like the approach that everybody's there. And we're not at a point where we can say like, here's the program. That will be coming. I'll leave it to April to commit to a date for programming. But we've just started to receive, we've evaluated some of the Cenofest and other program proposals that have come in, and that's moving on to the various the various strands to review and sort of put together a program so we can start allocating space, all that practical business of putting on an event of that scale. But given the unique perspective that each of you on the panel holds, what is something that you hope someone will get from participating in the World Stage Design program as you're thinking ahead towards what you want to prioritize into the program? What is something that you hope someone will take away? What is the program that you're trying to shape in your head, having not seen what the proposals are necessarily?
Well, I'm hoping that a takeaway would be the encouragement of the largest theater institutions to work ecologically and sustainably for all their productions, instead of it being like the token green production experiment. But I'm hoping that there is a push towards seeing how essential sustainable thinking is in art making, and like I just don't see any reason why it's not a number one priority in all scales of artistic production. So I'm hoping that there's a level of inspiration in the quality of art, but also in the how essential and urgent it is to move all industries towards a sort of a climate positive future. And I feel like if we can't do it in theater, then like how can we sort of, if we can't envision it and just do it in theater, then like it'll be a real challenge to do it elsewhere. So I'm hoping that is just, there's sort of an urgent inspiration that is taken.
I would say the micro version of what Michelle said is that within this urgency and this need, I hope that one designer comes to World Stage Design and sees these examples of EcoScenography as a creative, liberating, and inspiring force in the world, and a place for freedom of expression for themselves and their collaborators.
Those are excellent goals. It reminds me of, there's a work by historian Yuval Harari called Sapiens, popular book. Many people may have read it, but refers to civilization as a fiction. And I sort of like to extend that to it being a performance, like we're performing civilization. There's no like natural law that says like, make roads this way, exchange value in this way. And that if you reverse that, it means that, you know, one of the purposes of performance is modeling what we could have civilization to be. It both reflects it and imagines what it could be. So I think that's great. And I will mention that this is not in the practical aspects, but on what you were mentioning, Michelle, one of the programmatic aspects that we're adding, which is actually going to be happening before Worlds Stage Design is putting together like a leadership training program. It's going to be geared towards Canadian institutions, but working with our Arts Council, the Canada Council for the Arts, to develop like how do you create a program by which those who are providing leadership in our institutions who are supporting this work have the basis by which to actually do that most successfully and feel like they have a ground to do that. So if folks are interested in that as the program evolves, you might see that there. It will be related, it is intended to be related to a program called the Creative Climate Leadership Program from Julie's Bicycle. We might expand it in some various areas, and it will be immediately preceding World Stage Design, similar to how the CITT Rendezvous will be overlapping with the end. World Stage Design is just like it's a bell curve of activity. And Catherine, what are you hoping programmatically someone might get out of the World Stage Design program that you're going to have a hand in?
Well, I totally agree with what has just been said. And I'm very excited that there's going to be a leadership program as well. And but I think I would go one step further in saying that I think my goal would be that after attending World Stage Design, you come back to your institutions where it doesn't make sense anymore not to go in that direction, where it's not like a nice to have. And as Michelle was saying, like, this one project that's going to be green, or it's just that's the way we do things now. And it's not a question of, oh, do I have enough money to do it? Do I have enough time? What kind of project would fit that? But more to make it so obvious that, that it's possible to do it and it should be done that way. So it might sound a bit radical, but I really don't understand why it's not mandatory to work in such a way as of like now, and it should have started long ago.
Particularly with us about to have the climate conversations through the COP26 Conference of the Parties that's going to be happening in Glasgow. It's a good time for that, and will set us up. There's a lot of activity that happens in there as well. So I think I would point people to also be paying attention to the artistic response that happens around that, as not unrelated to sort of where programming might, as we do other global convenings like Worlds Stage Design happen. And Marie-Renee, what are there any other things that you think that you might like somebody who's attending World Stage Design, as you start to review the programmatic elements that come in, that you're hoping that someone might come away with from spending 2 weeks in Calgary?
Yeah, I hope that we dare to ask for change in our réseau, je sais pas comment dire. Aidez-moi, je sais pas, mais yeah. Anne-Catherine, t'as des trucs? Pardon?
Network.
Yeah.
Tu parlais de network. Réseau, c'est un network.
Thanks. I hope we dare to ask for change to our network we have to change what it's sorry, I'm so tired, so it's so tough. Yeah. But c'est ça, j'espère qu'on va oser déranger, oser changer, chacun dans nos milieux, mais tout en restant en contact. Parce que ça, c'est primordial, selon moi. Puis si quelqu'un veut me traduire, il n'y a pas de problème.
Thank you. That relates to there is in parallel, and some people who are involved with various OESTAT projects are part of this, but there is it's been entirely ad hoc. You'll hear from some of the people actually later in the program. This is an excellent transition to actually talk about later in the World Congress program. That there's been a group of folks, and Catherine involved as well, that have been starting to gather around tools Triga's been in those conversations as well. If I start going down the names, I'll be like, oh, right, a bunch of people know what I'm about to talk about. We've been doing like every 6 weeks, a group of people who are trying to create tools or guides or processes for sustainable transition within the performing arts, or actually in the art, like greening of the cultural sector since crossed over into museums, because it's very hard to delineate one specific thing, but just having conversations to check in so that there is a network of people that are starting to work together, and we're starting to like realize, because it becomes important to not feel like I'm just the oddball out in my community who's deciding to do this, but this is like a valid way in the future way of working as well. I think those are all excellent things to indicate. I will let others know, as this is the first of a series of world stage design conversations on a practical matter. I keep talking about like this program we're putting together, though depending on who's involved with it, you may know sooner. We're like, look to December for a program to come out. So that's when you'll start seeing those things actually manifest. You can let us know then whether or not we actually lined up with what we said today. Based off of what comes together, we've had a lot of exciting things come across. I know that I've seen a bunch of them as part of the larger like the upper level, like chairing, moving everything around piece. So as it comes into the specific topic areas, we're just coming into that now, but we're hoping that that will be able to be official before we get to the end of the year. So that if you've been waiting on registration for any reason, you'll then be like, why did I wait so long to register for this event? I want to make sure that I'm present for that. As we're coming to the close here, I wanted to mention a couple more things. There are a couple more sessions during World Congress related to World Stage Design. Tomorrow will actually be an announcement related to designers. That will be coming out. That will be tomorrow, an hour after this time. I have it as 11 a.m. local time. You'll have to do the conversion. It's on the site. It starts an hour after this session started. So if you came to this session an hour after that, there'll be an exhibited design announcement, which is really exciting. And then on the following day, on Monday, which is really fitting. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but what in the US actually becomes Indigenous Peoples Day will be a session with Hunter Cardinal on Indigenous ways of knowing that aspect of the program that will be happening as well. That will be at the same time as this session, but on Monday. Though it's not necessarily directly related to the World Stage Design EcoScenography program, except that people overlap and there'll probably be some programming there, but not necessarily as a World Stage Design event. I also want to highlight that if you're interested in talking more about sustainable practices in performance design, specifically as they relate to buildings operations, that there is a session on Wednesday, an hour before this one, 9 a.m. local time, with Patty Dillon and Andrew Wiley, talking about the Green Book Project, and Paul Burgess of SPTD and EcoStage talking about sustainable practices as well. That Kate is going to be. Yes, excellent. So we have those events coming up in this program as well. If you're interested in more of the programming around the CCTA Eco Design charrette, hello at Triga Creative. Is it .com or .ca? I always get it wrong.
.com, and we put it in the chat.
Yes, it's in the chat there too. So if you'd be interested in knowing more about that program and participating in that, send them an email and we'll invite you in. Those things are spread out throughout the time zones because there are people participating from many. So usually someone's on their way to bed and somebody's just getting up because we're sort of anchored at this point with a lot of that programming between Australia and the eastern seaboard of Turtle Island. Thank you all for joining us, and thanks for everybody for attending and talking. This is a great conversation to have as well, and I'm really excited that you're all going to be helping to shape this program. And we send our wishes for sweet dreams to Tanya at 2 a.m. local time in Brisbane. Thank you, everyone.
And I'm going to take this opportunity to play our World Stage Design promo video. Hopefully my sound Hopefully my sound will work. Thanks,
Play us
everyone.
out, Lisa.
You did a video
Lisa,
of the WT.
it's on
That
the
works.
registration page. We had the opposite problem. We could hear it great.
Yeah, we
but it's
can
on the
hear it,
registration
but not
page.
the video.
Ah! Let me share the right screen. It should be sharing QuickTime. Okay. Try this again.
There we go.
Go back to the beginning.